Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Lamed Bet in Masechet Zevachim, and we are at the beginning of the third chapter of Zevachim at the bottom of Lamed Aleph Amud Bet. The second chapter introduced us to a list of people who are not able to receive the blood. As a reminder, we have four key blood-related steps in the offering of a sacrifice. Step number one is you slaughter the animal. Step number two is one receives the blood in a special vessel, in one of the vessels of the Beis Hamikdash. The step number three is you take the blood to the altar. Step number four is you put the blood on the altar. So those are the four steps. We saw also that sometimes you can avoid step number three, especially if you slaughter the animal very close to the altar. But the bottom line is those are the four key steps. What we saw in the second chapter is that there are a variety of people who are not able to engage in the receiving of the blood. We didn't start with the first step of the slaughtering, and that's because we first wanted to identify the people who are not able to do the receiving of the blood. And similarly, they're not able to do the taking of the blood to the altar, and they're not able to do the putting of the blood on the altar. Those are the three steps that require a Kohen to be involved. But we now go back to the first step, which is the slaughtering of the animal. Here, let me see if I can find it. The slaughtering of the animal. Yes, here it is. The slaughtering of the animal and the first step, and we'll see exactly who's able to engage in this first step. We're right there. Okay, so Kol HaPasulim Sheshachatu, anybody who is puzzle, then these are the referring back to the people that we referenced in the last parak, and they slaughter Shchitasan Kshera, their slaughtering is valid. This is again a key element that even though we say that slaughtering is one of the four steps in bringing an offering, it is able to be done by anyone. Shashchita kshera b'zarim, because slaughtering can be done even by non-kohanim, uvinashim, and even by women, uva'avadim, and even by slaves, uvatameim, and even by people who are tamei, va'afilu b'kodshe kodashim, and this is true even for the super duper holy sacrifices. They can be slaughtered by anyone. But the key is that if it's somebody who's tamei, they may have to be careful not to touch the meat. And so as a result of the fact that all of these people are kosher to do the slaughtering, they are all potential. They each have the potential to invalidate the offering if they have an improper thought. And so, as Rashi says, Lefika Hein Poslin, last Rashi on the daf, second to last line, as a korban. Therefore, they are going to cause the korban to be invalid, b'machshava, with a thought. Im shachtuhu b'machshava, if they shech the animal with this improper thought, either and the Hagos Habach adds chutz lizmano, chutz b'chutz limkomo. If they have the thought to slaughter the animal either outside the to consume the animal outside the right time, or to consume the animal outside the right place. If they have that thought while they are slaughtering the animal, it's going to be cause the animal to be an invalid sacrifice. Dehoil the ru'uyin, because they are fit la'avodazu, for this work, for this step of the process. Machshavatan machshava, their thoughts are considered valid thoughts. Their thoughts have the ability to invalidate a sacrifice. So again, if, for example, I, who's a non-Kohen, were to receive the blood and think about bringing that blood and sprinkling that blood putting that blood on the altar after the right time or eating that sacrifice not in the right time, that thought doesn't matter because I'm not kosher to do the catching of the blood. But if I were to slaughter the animal and have that same thought, because I'm kosher to slaughter the animal, therefore my thought is going to be sufficient to invalidate the sacrifice. Now, we'll go back and we'll do the second Rashi on the in the Perek, because what kind of tuma are we talking about? So Rashi offers two possibilities. Ubitimeim, when we say that somebody is tame, betame sharetz kamar, we're talking about a tuma of a that comes from having touched a dead sheretz. She'enu mitame kli, because that a person who's touched that animal who then touches a vessel is not the lav is not going to make that vessel tame. The lav avhatumahu, because only a avhatuma can make a vessel tame. But here the person would be a rishon latuma, and so as a result, that has to be what we're talking about, because otherwise the knife that we have would become tame, and it would cause the animal to then become tame, because food can be a sheni latuma, and so as a result, it would be a problem. Betame mace, or we could be talking about somebody who's tame mace, ukegon shibadak karomit shel kana, and it's where they had a very sharp reed, v'shachatba, and so the item that was used to slaughter the animal is not capable of being makabel tuma because it's not considered a kli, and so as a result, that could be what we're talking about. Aval besakin, but with a traditional knife, it can't be shehu mitame as a sakin, because he would cause the knife to become tame. Va'asakim mitamem as habasar, and the knife would cause the animal to become tame. And now take a look at the habach, goes habach ubilvad shelo yeyu tameim nogim bebasar. Now, what's key is that the person cannot touch the meat directly. The kigon, and what's the situation where that could happen? Kigon de avid suckin aricha v'shachet, where he has a long knife that is able to reach from the location where somebody who's tame mace can stand into the area where the animal is being slaughtered, and then he uses that that knife to then slaughter the animal, and he's far away from the actual animal, so he's not going to touch it. So that's the situation that we're talking about.
In the first Rashi, the first section of Rashi, B'tamei Sheretz, Kamashi Eino Metamei Kli, B'lav Avatumahu. Now there is something from a person, the spit from a person, for instance, can be Matame, a Kli, right? And the Rabbanan, the Gemara in Mishnah and Sukkah talks about what a Tame, and it says that they made a gezerah that beverages that's a rabbinic tuma. They can make a kli tame because they weren't sure. They didn't want people to be confused between what type of liquid. We know that it's from the liquid, from the spit of a person or his other bodily fluids. So therefore, they make it because it's a rabbinic tuma. But so even beverages could be matame a kli. That's what in the Mishnah and Gemara and Sukkah says.
Okay, I'm not sure that I completely follow. I mean, I understand everything you said, but I don't understand what your question is.
The question is like when it says she'enu matame kli the lav avatumahu. It's because this whatever the share, it's not an avatuma, but there are
no. The sheretz is the avatuma. The person who is tame from the sheretz is a rishon latuma. So that's the point. The rishon latuma doesn't have the ability to cause tuma, and you may be right with respect to a variety of things that the rabbis instituted, but those institutions in connection with tuma do not apply in the Beis Hamikdash. So the point is that when it comes to a vessel of the Beis Hamikdash, I don't believe that those same rules apply. So the point is that in any event, we're not dealing with any liquid touching the knife. The only liquid that's touching the knife is going to be the blood from the animal, which is not tamei. So the point is that there isn't anything going on here with respect to the knife that's going to cause the knife to become tamei. Yes, you're right that the spit of somebody who's tamei can cause tuma to be conveyed, but that is not going to be what's happening here because the person's not spitting on the knife and the person's not going to have any liquids on the knife. And even if he did, it could be that the knife was a reed and it's not capable of becoming tamei in the first place. So no matter what, the whole point of what Rashi is trying to set up here is he's setting up two different potential situations where you could have somebody who is tamei touch an object that is able to slaughter an animal, and yet that object does not become tamei. And so that's what we're dealing with here. So that's the situation of that we're talking about. And so certainly there could be things that cause the things to become tamei, but that's not the situation that we're dealing with here. So the
I guess I was
continuing
just
on.
confused by the lo avatuma, implying in my mind that only something that's avatuma could cause something else to be tame.
Yes, only something that's an avatuma can cause a vessel, a kli, to become tummy. You're absolutely right with respect to food and other things where we have various rabbinic situations that we can allow tuma to go in multiple levels. But and so that's certainly true. And of course, we say specifically here that the person can't touch the animal itself. You're right that that it's potentially that it's not just an hatuma that is capable of making something else tame. But when it comes to a kli, then yes, it is just an av hatuma that is able to make a kli tame. When it comes to the animal, which is food, then you're right. There are other things that can cause tuma to be conveyed. But when we're talking about a kalim of the Beis Hamikdash, you need to be an avatuma to be able to make it tummy, and it has to be a kli. And again, the second explanation of Rashi
Well,
is the
that's
fact
nice.
that it's not a kli in the first place, and so as a result, it can't become tummy.
So is a
All right.
spit from a person considered avatuma?
A spit from a person who is an
Tame.
avatuma may very well be. I don't remember the details of that sugya, but the point is that and the question is what was it causing to become tame? That's the you have to look at the sugya over there to see exactly what was causing it to become tame. But here we're dealing with the knife, and the knife is a kli, and a kli doesn't become tame unless it's touching an avatuma. The kulan shekiblu. So now we continue on lamed bedam with aleph. The kulan shekiblu es hadam chutz lizmano v'chutz limkomo. And when it comes to these people who can do shchita, but we already saw in the last chapter are unable and improper to do the receiving of the blood, if they do the receiving of the blood and they think about eating the offering either outside the right time or outside the right place, im yesh dam hanefesh, if there's still blood coming out of the animal, that is the life blood that is spurting out as a result of the shchita, yachzor hakasher, the kosher person for receiving the blood can go back v'yikabel and receive that blood. And Rashi tells us, im yesh dam hanefesh, second line, od bebehemus, if there's still that lifeblood in the animal, yachzor hakasher, the kosher person can go back to the animal, v'yikabel, and then he'll receive it, v'yizro kakosher, and of course the kosher person will then do the throwing. She'ein machshavatan shel elu posaltan bekabbalah, because somebody who's not qualified to receive the blood is not going to be able to invalidate the sacrifice through improper thoughts when he is receiving the blood, because he's not allowed to be the one to receive the blood. Lefisha ein ru'uyin la, he's not fit for that job. Ve'ein machshava, and the thoughts of somebody the thoughts of somebody will not cause an animal to become invalid, ela b'misha roi la'avoda, unless the person who's doing this specific work associated, this specific service associated with the sacrifice, is fit to do that service. Dixie, because we have a pasuk in Vayikra Perek Zayim, Hamakriv Oto Lo Yichashev, the one who brings it is not allowed to have the thought. Beroi lahakrava. It's got to be the one who is fit to bring it. Hakasa medaber. That's what the Torah is telling us. So that is the next point in this Mishnah. So again, the first point is that everybody's kosher for shechita, and the second point is that everybody who's not kosher for receiving it, if he receives it and has a thought, that receiving is as if it didn't happen. Kibel hakosher v'nosan lapasel. If the right person, a Kohen, receives the blood, but then he hands it off to somebody who's not allowed to, yachzor lakosher. The other person can just give it right back. Kibel bimino v'nosan l'smolo. If he received it in the right hand and now he moved it to his left hand, which of course you're not supposed to do the services with your left hand, yachzor limino. He should return it to his right hand. Kibel b'kli kodesh v'nasan l'kli chol. You received it in a proper vessel that is holy, but then you put it in a non-sacred vessel. Yachzor l'kli kodesh. You got to put it back. Nishbach min hakli ala ritzba va'asafu. If he spilled the blood on the floor, and now va'asafu, and now he collects it. Kasher, he can now continue the service. The point is that if the blood ends up not where it's supposed to be, you can move it back to where it's supposed to be and everything will be okay. We can effectively skip steps. Meaning, even though the person who's holding the blood at this moment is not supposed to be holding it, or the thing that's holding it is not supposed to be holding it, or the place of it is not the right place, we can fix it because it doesn't completely undo it. We can effectively undo those steps. However, nisanu al gabi kakevesh, if you put the blood on the ramp, shalokin yasod, or you put the blood not opposite, not above where there is a base to the altar. Again, the base of the altar was on the northern and western sides of the altar, and then it hooked around a little bit of the eastern side and a little bit of the southern side, but was not at all in the southeastern corner. So if you were to put the blood on the southeastern corner, so nasan es hanitanim lamata lamalo, or you put the blood that's supposed to go below, you put it above, or as hanitanim lamalon lamata, or what was supposed to go above the line, that the midline of the altar, the red line on the altar that differentiates between certain sacrifices, the blood goes above it, and certain sacrifices, the blood goes below it. And if you were to put the blood that was supposed to go above it below it, or you put the blood that's supposed to go inside the kodesh, and you put it on the outer altar of esanitan b'chutz b'fnim, or you put what was supposed to go on the outer altar, you put it on the inner altar. None of that is valid. Im yesh dam hanefesh, if there's still blood spurting out of the neck of the animal, yachzor hakasher v'kabel. Well, now the blood that you've done this to is no longer valid. So it's unlike it fell on the floor, right? When it fell on the floor, you could pick it up and you can just scoop it all up and then continue on with the service. Here, what happens is you put the blood in the wrong place. Once you put the blood on the wrong place, now you need to go back to the beginning and get more blood. Okay, so that is our Mishnah. Shacha 2. The Gemara points out that when we said that anyone can slaughter, we said kol hapasulim sheshachatu. That is a past tense verb, that they already slaughtered. So it's on some way implying that it's only kosher b'di'evet. And that's the point that the Gemara is going to make. Di'avad in lichatchila lo. Doesn't the fact that it's in the past indicate that it's only permitted in a b'di'evet case, and that ab initio, to do it in the very beginning, we would not allow it. But one second, uraminu, we have a brisa that seems to suggest otherwise. Vishachat shchita bazar. When it says in the Torah that you slaughtered it, that's a reference to Vayikra Perak Aleph Pasuk Hey. Shchita bazar kshera. The slaughtering of a non-Kohen is kosher. Shashchita kshera bazarim, because the slaughtering of an offering is by a non-Kohen is kosher. Uba nashim, uba avadim, uba tameim, and you can even have a woman do it. You can even have a slave do it. You can even have somebody who's tamei do it. Va'afilu b'kodshe kadashim, even with the holy of holies. So the bottom line is, how come our Mishnah seems to imply that it's only those who only a b'di'evet situation, and this brisa suggests that it's even lechatchila.
So
So
people used to slaughter. They used to have private bamot, and an individual could go slaughter an animal, right?
well, that's true. Not when the time base of Migdash,
I
of course.
understand that, but I
Yeah, but
mean, so the, and when the point is that almost anybody could slaughter the animal.
correct, 100%. That's exactly what we're just saying right now. So, oh, ain't no el. So now the question. So now the brisa, as often brisas do, and sometimes even the Mishnah will do this, use this kind of language. Is say, well, one second, maybe that's not the case. Oh, ain't no el b'kohanim. Well, one second, maybe I could say that when it says v'shachat, it means only kohanim. So amarta v'chimi ayin basa. And if you say, one second, how or where do you get the idea that it should be a Kohen? Miklal shenamar. Well, one second, we have a general statement. V'ata uvanecha itcha tishmeru es kuhunaschem l'chol davar hamizbeach. Right? The pasuk is in Bamidbar Perak Yudchet pasuk Zion. This is after the story with Korach, where the Kohanim are told that they have to deal with every aspect of the altar. So Yachol af b'shchita, I might have thought that that would include even the slaughtering. So Talmud Lomar b'shachat as ben habakar lifnei Hashem v'hikrivu. Right now, it's important to note the next words: v'hikrivu b'nei Aharon hakohanim es hadam. So the point is what are we going to? So what does it mean? The pasuk's saying that he's going to slaughter the bull before Hashem, and the children of Aaron, the Kohanim, will bring the blood. So Mekabbalah ve'elach mitzvahs kahuna. What do we see from this? What immediately happens after the what is the Torah referencing? The Torah is referencing the bringing of the blood to the altar. But the first thing that has to happen, and this we've seen previously, that vehikrivu is understood to mean Kabbalah. So mikabbalah ve'elech being the receiving, because you can't bring something that you didn't receive. So the implication is mikabbalah ve'elech mitzvahs kahuna. Specifically, the Torah says ve'ikrivu b'nei Aaron hakohanim, implying that first step of receiving the blood needs to be done by the Kohanim, even though, again, the pasuk literally means the bringing is done by the Kohanim, but we understand, because it doesn't ever tell you that we have to receive the blood, we understand that bringing of the blood is referring to the receiving of the blood, and so from the receiving of the blood onward, that's what has to be done by the Kohanim. As Rashi tells us, it's from the bottom of the narrow lines in Rashi, it's the seventh narrow line. V'hikrivu kohanim midiksiv b'kabbalah kahuna, because when it says the Kabbalah, it refers to a Kohen, ubishchita loksiv, and it doesn't say that also with respect to the slaughtering. Limit ala shchita shikshera bizarre. We see that from the slaughtering can be done by anyone. So limit ala shchira. Now back into the Gemara, right? So limit ala shchita shikshera b'chol adam, that you can do it with anybody. We're now on the fourth to last narrow line of Lamed Bet Amud Aleph. Hu adin dafilu l'chadchila nami, and so this should be true even initially, and so as a result, Why? So now that was the end of the brisa. The brisa shows that you could do it even lichatchila. And why did our Mishnah say that you can't do it? That it's only b'di'eved. So umishum de kabay lemisna tenmeim de lechatchila lo gzeira shema yigu babasar. Yes, in fact, our Mishnah teaches that every one of those people, including women, could do the shchita even lechatchila. The only one who can't do it is somebody who's tamei. And why? Is because there's a rabbinic decree that maybe they will come and touch the meat, and so as a result, Tana Shachatu and Sheshachatu. And therefore, the Mishnah specifically references that they slaughtered it in the past to indicate that in this case, in the broad case of dealing with all of these categories, it's only b'di'eved, specifically because we are also talking about somebody who's tamei, and somebody who's tamei is not kosher to sacrifice to slaughter the animal, to slaughter the sacrifice lichatchila. Lichatchila, he should have let somebody who's not tamei do the slaughtering. Now, I will note.
Do we allow him to shecht it if b'di'eved, basically? If he shechted, it's still kosher animal?
Correct. If he shechted it and he didn't actually touch the animal, then it would all be kosher. That's
How does he
exactly
shecht it
right.
without touching the animal?
What?
How does he shecht it without, isn't he
That's
holding the
why
animal in
that
place?
was the Rashi that we saw. The point is that he uses a long knife.
No, but it's still someone else has to hold the animal so it doesn't
Yes,
run away.
yes, somebody else must be holding the animal. I'm sure that that's the case, but he's not holding the animal. He's only moving the knife. The person who's slaughtering is the one who is moving the knife or holding the knife associated with the killing of the animal. Okay, so vitame diavad shapir dame, but 1 second, is really a tame person able to do the slaughtering or a minu? I'll give you another brisa that seems to contradict our Mishnah, v'samach v'shachat, that the Torah connects the idea of leaning on the animal and slaughtering the animal.
There it is, touching the animal.
What?
That's what I'm thinking. He is touching the animal. He's holding it in some manner.
No. The smicha is a separate step. That's before you even engage in it. Often the owner of the animal would do the smicha. The point is that this is a completely separate state. The bottom line is that yes, 99% of the time, somebody who's doing the slaughtering is slaughtering with a smaller knife and is touching the animal in order to sort of make sure that they've got the leverage, etc. But the bottom line is that, and by the way, there were rings in the Kodesh. I'm sorry, not in the Kodesh. In the Azara, in the courtyard, in order to tie up the animal, to make sure that they were able to
put them in a restrictive box. If
correct,
you will,
correct,
so
exactly.
not much
So you don't have to
thrashing.
move exactly. And so as a result, that's how they could potentially, and particularly have the neck in an immovable location, so that way the slaughterer can do the shechita effectively. But again, the bottom line is we're now quoting a brisa that seems to suggest that even somebody who's tamei can't do the slaughtering at all, because we just connected the leaning and the slaughtering. This is from a pasuk, Vayikra Perek Aleph pasuk Dalet and Hey, Mas Micha b'Tahorim Afshchita b'Tahorim, and the brisa continues that just as the leaning has to be done by somebody who's tar, so too the slaughtering has to be done by somebody who's tar, and this seems to be an indication that that's a even b'di'eved situation. So no, midirabanan. That is telling us a rabbinic teaching. So even though we cited a pasuk, it's actually only a rabbinic requirement. So ma'ishna smicha. So why is smicha different? Diksiv lifnei Hashem. Shchita nami yaksiv lifnei Hashem. You're going to tell me that that the smicha has to be done by somebody who's tahor. That's clear. So in part because of the location of the animal. But in any event, the point is that it has to be done by somebody who's tahor. So and why does it have to be done by somebody who's tahor? Because it has to be done lifnei Hashem, which means in the temple courtyard. And a person who's tameh can't enter the courtyard. So how could they do smicha? Well, shchita nami. Well, same thing with the slaughtering. Haksiv lifnei Hashem. It also says lifnei Hashem. So after da'avid sakin aruka v'shachit. Yes, the slaughtering needs to be done with a inside the courtyard, but I can use a long knife, stand outside the courtyard if I'm tameh, and do the slaughtering by long distance. Well, smichanami, after dema'ayel yadev summit, maybe he could stand outside also and just reach in his hands and put his hands on the animal. So kasavar bia mixus shma bia. So it must be that the Tana of this brisa that says that connects smicha to shchita, and we say is telling us that actually rabbinically you're not allowed to do shchita lichatchila if you're tameh, but you and when it comes to smicha, you can't do it at all. It must be that the person is saying that they think that if you enter, even if just your hands were to go in, that would cause you, that would be as if you entered the courtyard, and it would result in your being subject to the penalty of being a tameh person who reached their hands into the courtyard. And so as a result, it's as if your body went into the courtyard. So that is one way to understand that brisa that we just quoted, that said that we used as a question to say smicha and shchita are connected, and therefore we should say that maybe we should say that this contradicts our Mishnah, and we say no, it doesn't have to contradict our Mishnah. Bottom line is that you can't do smicha because your hands will go into the partially into the courtyard, and that's going to be a problem. But you can do shchita because none of you needs to go in if you're using a long shechting knife. All right? But Rav Chisda taught this brisa the exact opposite way. And based on this version of the brisa, the author of the brisa disagrees with our Mishnah. And he says that someone who's tameh cannot shecht even b'di'evid. Because what does he say? V'samach v'shachat. He is going to learn in the opposite direction. Mashchita b'tahorin. Here he's beginning with the point that a shchita must be with somebody who's tahor. Av smicha b'tahorin. So too smicha has to be with somebody who's tahor. My shna shchita. Why is it that the shchita has to be with somebody who's tahor? Tiksiv lifnei Hashem, because it says that the person has to be in front of Hashem. As we turn to Lamed Bet Amud Bet. So, smicha nami, ksiv lifnei Hashem. Well, why do I need to connect smicha and shchita? They both have the word lifnei Hashem, meaning why do I need to use the juxtaposition to teach us this lesson? I could use the fact that the words lifnei Hashem mean that you need to be in the azara, in the temple courtyard, and if you need to be in the azara, you got to be tahor. So why can't we use that? No, after demayel yade v'samech. Well, no, because maybe the person could just stick his hands into the courtyard and he could be standing outside the courtyard. And according to this version, we aren't saying necessarily that partial entry is equal to full entry. Well, shchitanami after da'avid. So at the moment, why is it that we're leaning from slaughtering rather than learning the fact that lifnei Hashem means that everybody's got to be tahor? Because I might have thought that, well, maybe it's okay if I just stick my hands into the azara, into the courtyard, and lean on the animal. So as a result, we teach a full connection of shchita and smicha, and we say just as shchita, you need to be fully tahor, and you can't just stick your hands in. So too, when it comes to smicha, you can't just stick your hands in and do it. Well, shchita nami efshar de'avid sakin aruka v'shachit. Well, how do I know that you can't have somebody who's tameh stand outside the azara and reach a very long knife and use that to slaughter an animal inside the azara? So, high money, Shimon HaTimni. This is Shimon HaTimni. And what does Shimon HaTimni say? Well, Titania, we've got a brisa. V'shachat es ben habakar lefnei Hashem. You have to, the Tanakama says that quoting the pasuk, this is a pasuk, Vayikra Perak Aleph Pasuk Hey, that you need to slaughter the bull in front of Hashem. Lo ashochet lifnei Hashem. The slaughterer doesn't need to be for Hashem. Just the animal has to be in front of Hashem. Shimon HaTimni Omer, but Shimon HaTimni, and of course this is why we're quoting this brisa. Minayin sheyu yadav hashal shochet lifnim min hanishchat. How do I know that the hands of the slaughterer actually have to be further inside the courtyard than the animal that's being slaughtered? So we know that the person himself needs to be inside. Talmud Lomar v'shachat es ben habakar lifnei Hashem. He has to slaughter the animal lifnei Hashem. Shochet es ben habakar yehei lifnei Hashem. He also, the one who's slaughtering, also needs to be in front of Hashem. So as a result, when Rav Chisda taught this brisa, he taught it based on what Shimon HaTimni is saying. And so Shimon HaTimni can argue with our Mishnah. He's also a Tana. Shimon HaTimni would say that somebody who's tameh is not allowed to slaughter a sacrifice, whereas the Tanakama of our Mishnah says that you are allowed to slaughter a sacrifice. Okay? So Amar Ula, Amar Reish Lakish. So Ula quotes Reish Lakish as saying, Tameh shehichnis yado lifnim loka. That even partial entry, somebody who's tameh, who even sticks their hand into the courtyard, is going to get lashes. Shene'amar, B'kol kodesh lo tiga. This is a reference. This is from Vayikra Perek Yud Bet Pasuk Dalid. Parshas Tazria, that is talking about a woman who gave birth and she's not allowed to touch anything holy. And the pasuk continues, kodesh lo tiga ve'el hamikdash lo tavo, and she also can't go to the Beis Hamikdash. Makish bia l'negia. Back into the Gemara, we're connecting the coming into the sanctuary with touching things. Ma negia b'mikzah shma negia. When it comes to transferring tuma by touching something, you don't have to touch it with your entire body. Just your hands are sufficient to touch something and cause the tuma that is on you or in you to transfer to the item that you're touching. Af bia b'mikzah shma bia. So too, you don't have to have your whole body in the Beis Hamikdash in order to be a problem, even just part of your body. So now we're going to challenge Ula's position of bias b'mikzas shma bia, that even coming in a little bit is going to be considered coming in, and as if you came in completely. And we're going to do so based on a brisa that deals with a mitzorah. Now, it's important to know the process of a mitzorah becoming tahor in order to understand this brisa. That what happens? We begin with a mitzorah. The mitzorah had sarat. Now, thank God he's healed. And now he went to the mikveh on day 7 and now it's after the nightfall of day 7, and he is on some level completely tahor, but he has to bring sacrifices on day 8. So he is what we refer to as mechusar kapara. He's missing his kapara, his atonement. That he has to bring the sacrifices to finish the process and become fully tahor. And we've seen already, even in Zevachim itself, that person is on some level considered tameh, and he's not allowed to go into the azara. What did he do? He would stand in Shar Nicanor, in the Nicanor gate, at the top of the steps, where right off of the Ezras Nashim, and he would stand there and he would reach his right thumb, his right ear, and his right big toe into the courtyard, and the process of purifying him with the blood from the bird that was slaughtered would be put on his right ear, on his right thumb, and his right big toe. And that would and that's part of the offering of the sacrifice. Now, again, this is somebody who is on some level tameh, and yet this is how we do it because the blood cannot go out of the azara, so we sort of allow him to do this entry into the airspace of the azara. So
He puts his hand, he puts it right through this hole. There's a hole there, right? Like a space.
No, it's the doorway. It's the
No,
doorway.
okay, even a doorway, but
it's a doorway.
He
Exactly.
puts his body part through that. It's a
Correct.
Gemara
Correct.
early. It was another Gemara that took.
That's exactly right. 100%. We've seen this during the course of our Daf Yomi learning together. So so now with that background, we can now ask our question. Esve Rav Hoshaya la Ula. Rav Hoshaya challenged Ula. Mitzorah shechal shmini shalo lios be'erev Pesach. If we have somebody who's a mitzorah and it's now the 8th day is Erev Pesach. So Erev Pesach, he went to the mikvah and he became a mechusar kapara. Now on this Erev Pesach, he's still tameh. So the question is, and now, so of course, if he could go through the process, everything would be fine. Vira keri bo bayom. And unfortunately, though, he became a Baal Keri. He had a nocturnal emission, a seminal discharge, and as a result, he needs tefillah, v'tava, and now he went to the mikveh. But the problem is he doesn't become tahor from that becoming tameh with a Baal Keri until that night. And so, but now he needs to be considered tahor, but he needs the Mitzorah process to be finished in order to be tahor. So if it would happen any other day of the year, well, we could just let him wait until potentially day 9, and and on day 9, he's now tahor from being a Baal Keri, and now he'll offer his korban from the Mitzorah, and everything will be fine. But today is Erev Pesach. We need him to be tahor now so that he can have his sacrifice offered. But he can't stick his thumb into the and ear and big toe into the zara, according to Ula, because bia b'mitzvahs shma bia, because even entering a little bit is considered like entering completely. And yet, what does the Chachamim say? Amru Chachamim, af al pi she'ein tvul yom acher nichnas, even though ordinarily, in any other time, a tvul yom is not allowed to enter the courtyard, and he's not even allowed to enter the Temple Mount. Right? You can't even get to the courtyard to do it. Zen nichnas. We're going to allow this guy to go onto the Har Bayis, because it's important to note that a Baal Keri not only can't they go into the Azara, they can't even go onto the Har Bayis. And even though he's a Tvul Yom, he went to the mikvah, and he's going to become tahor tonight. He too still can't go onto the Har Bayis. But we're going to let this guy, the rabbis say, mutav yavo ase sheyesh bo kares, better that he should be able to come and accomplish a mitzvah that if he didn't accomplish, he would be subject to kares, namely offering the korban pesach, v'yidche ase, and will push off the positive commandment, she'ein bo kares, that doesn't have kares. And what's the positive commandment? The positive commandment of you're not allowed as a Baal Keri to go on Har Bayis. That is why, by the way, we generally, if you go on a tour that actually goes onto the Temple Mount, you need to make sure to go to the mikveh the night before, according to those who even allow you to do it. I wouldn't recommend it, but the point is that if you do it, you need to go to the mikveh, because most of us are all Baal Keri because we've had emissions. So the point is that we're going to allow him to do it. So doesn't this contradict Ula? Ula says bia b'mitzvahs shma bia, and so as a result, when the Baal Keri sticks his thumb into the courtyard, He's a Balkari sticking his thumb into the courtyard. And so even if he's a Tvul Yom. And as a result, he shouldn't be allowed to do that. So Rabbi Yochanan, now Rabbi Yochanan, before we get to the rest
But
of
why
the
not?
question,
I don't know. So why not? Wouldn't this be a classic example of someone who would observe Pesach Sheni? He's Tameh or he's at Rachok. So this person, let him wait till Pesach Sheni.
excellent question. The bottom line is that if we can find a way to allow a person to offer Pesach on Pesach, that's the best. And so as a result, you're absolutely right. Technically, he could just wait till Pesach Sheni. But we're saying the point is that he's not truly going to be Tameh that night. Technically, there's a way for him to become tahor already. And as a result, the rabbis say we're going to let you, essentially violate a positive commandment because who knows what will happen. This is one of many situations where we don't know what's going to happen. Who knows whether the person will survive the next month. We want, if you can do a mitzvah now, we want to enable you to do the mitzvah now. So highlights an important point, your question. But before we continue with the question, we are going to learn that Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with this idea. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Dvar Torah afilu ase einbo. There's no violation whatsoever here because a Tvul Yom is fully allowed to go into the courtyard. Shene'amar Yamod Yehoshaphat b'Kahal Yehudav Yerushalayim b'Beis Hashem l'fnei hachatzer hachadasha. That Yehoshaphat stood among the congregation of Judah and Yerushalayim in the house of Hashem in front of the new courtyard. My chatzer hachadasha. What does that mean? The new courtyard. Amar Rabbi Yochanan shechidshu v'dvarim. That they had introduced a new pronouncement about its holiness. V'amru Tvul Yom al yikanes l'machane leviyah. And they said a Tvul Yom can't enter the camp of the Levium. But what's the point? I.e., they can't enter the whole Harabayas. But the point is that there's no positive commandment from the Torah that would bar somebody to enter Tvul Yom. It was only a rabbinic decree that said that you can't go in as a Tvul Yom. So, having said that, the Rabbi Yochanan thinks that the Tvul Yom prohibition is only rabbinic, and therefore there's no question here whatsoever. But Ivi Amras Bia B'Mixas Shma Bia. Now we're going to ask the question on Ula. If you say that going in a little bit is considered going in, how could he stick his hands into the Azara? Whether he's you end up with two situations of kares. Either he's going to get kares for not bringing the korban pesach, or he's going to get kares for putting his hands into the courtyard. Now, I will note one other answer to your question that just occurs to me as we're going through this Gemara as to why we don't just say, well, let him just go on Pesach Sheni. The issue is that he is technically tahor at night because he went to the mikvah with respect to he went to the mikvah with respect to his status as a Balkari, and he went to the mikvah with respect to his status as a Mitzorah. So he's fully tahor, he's just mechusar kapara.
But it's Erev Shemesh regarding Balkari.
Correct. So on Pesach night, he's tahor. He
still has to bring he's mechusar kapara. He still has to bring the 100%.
He's mechusar kapara.
So can you count the korban pesach as that kapara?
No. You need the actual sacrifice. But the point is because he's tahor, because he's tahor, he technically should have be able to eat from the korban pesach, but he's mechusar kapara. So the point is that we want to try. This is somebody who we especially want to try to enable them to eat from the korban pesach, because technically at this moment on Pesach, when Pesach begins, the night of the 15th, he's tahor. He's just mechusar kapara. So we want to try to especially enable him to offer the sacrifice.
When does he have to fulfill the kapara? Does it have to be in morning or can it be at night?
No, no, it has to be in morning because it's a sacrifice that he has to bring. So
Well,
he has
you bring in the Korban Pesach, it's you're eating
Yes,
that at night.
that's true, but that's the one exception. So all right, so Amar Le, so Ula responds, you
I
know
don't
what?
understand Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, he brings this Ha'ora. So,
So
but
again, Rabbi
don't we?
Yochanan's taking a
I understand,
completely
but
different
don't we
position.
say that we, if the Rabbanim make a gezerah halacha, we follow the Rabbanim. The Rabbanim are like the extension of the Torah. So I don't understand how his point here. Once, even though at one that he may say it's not a Torah edict, but if the Rabbanim make a law ruling, so why don't we follow the Rabbanim? The Rabbanim, right?
Excellent question. So the point is that because the rabbis made this rule, it's easy for them to then say we're going to make an exception in this one case. So the
Okay.
point is that's how Rabbi Yochanan can understand it. Once we're making an exception, we're making an exception. We'll make an exception for this one case because we want to make sure that this guy's able to bring it. So we'll go back to the biblical law in that situation. But the point is for Ula, this ends up being a question. But the answer is the following: Amar Le, Ula says, Mitunach, your bundle, shiny mitzora, highlights already is going to answer the question because Mitzora is different because the Mitzora himself is not allowed to enter the Azara. And yet, what is he doing? He's sticking his thumb in, he's sticking his right ear in, and he's sticking his right big toe in. V'hoel v'hilter l'tzarato. So once we're going to allow the tsaras person to stick in their right ear, right thumb, and right big toe, hutter lakirio. So we'll also allow this person, just because he's a balkari, it's the same thing, same rule, same everything. So we're going to say, you know what? Just as you could do that one, you could do this one. So, all right. So we are going to pick up from here, God willing, tomorrow. And Rav Yosef is going to try and say that just as Ula, given Ula's statement, maybe we should allow a whole big category that just of tuma to be permitted to bring sacrifices if everybody is tame, not just tame mace, but even another category. But for that discussion, they'll have to stay
So
tuned.
when would Ula then say that this Metzorah has to fulfill the kapara the following morning on Pesach morning itself? We allow him to bring the Korban Pesach.
No. The answer that we just gave is Ula agrees with that Mishnah, agrees with that brisa. That even the brisa says, the Chachamim say that we're going to let this person stick his right thumb, right ear, and right big toe into the Azara, even though he's a Balkari also who's a Tful Yom, because we're going to allow that, and that's what the brisa says. And what Ula would say is, yes, you're absolutely right. Then entering a little bit is like entering completely, and therefore you would not ordinarily be allowed to do it. But since we allow this entry for a Mitzora, the Mitzora couldn't do it even before, right? Before we even get started, there's the halachot associated with the Mitzora. And a Mitzora is not allowed to enter the courtyard. And yet we allow him to stick his right ear, right thumb, and right big toe into the courtyard in order to have the blood put on them. And so just as, so what Ula says is just as we allow that for a Mitzora, we can make a special exception for the Baal Keri. That just as we allow the Mitzora to stick that little bit into the courtyard, we'll allow the Baal Keri to stick this little bit into the courtyard. Even though it's a separate prohibition, both a Baal Keri can't go into the courtyard and it would be subject to kares, and a Mitzora can't go into the courtyard and it would be subject to kares. So all right, so it's the same thing. It's the exact same prohibition that we're overcoming. So we'll allow that same exact prohibition to be overcome in two different ways.
Oh, so
by
he does
same act.
So therefore he can do that kapara on that day, on Erev Pesach.
Therefore, he could do the kapara on Erev Pesach,
Pesach.
and therefore he will be completely tahor that night, and therefore he'll be able to participate fully in the Korban Pesach.
But he has to wait till nightfall because he's a Baal Keri. He has to wait till nightfall in order to participate in the Korban Pesach, though,
Yeah,
right?
well, everybody waits until it's actual night, right? You don't eat the korban
Right,
until it's night. So absolutely, that's 100%. Those work together. He
right,
just can't. He shouldn't be the one to slaughter the animal. He shouldn't be the one to go into the Beis Hamikdash yet, right? I mean, the point is that as soon as he does those, gets the kapara on being a mitzora, he should leave the make sure that he stays outside of the zara. Of course, it's probably too busy anyway, but the point is he should stay outside because he's not going to, he should then
right,
leave even the harabayas, right? Because he's still a tvul yom. And according
right.
to the non-Rabbi Yochanan opinion, a tvul yom shouldn't be on the harabayas. It's an asay that he's violating. So he should leave immediately the harabayas. And then you eat the korban pesach all of Yerushalayim, so he can
Right.
be anywhere in Yerushalayim. And when they bring the korban pesach to his home or wherever the home he's staying in for Pesach, so then everybody can have the wonderful dinner together.
How does the Mitzorah bring the Korban into to the Azara for Shechita? He can't put him,
So
he can't walk
he
in
hands it
himself.
to he hands it to a Kohen while he is in the from at the door he'll hand it to the Kohen at the door. And I can't remember whether there's also a because it's words, I don't think there is any smicha on it. So my recollection is that he would give the birds to the Kohen who's going to do the sacrificing. The Kohen goes into the Azara, but he remains in Shar Nikanor, and the Kohen then comes to him with the blood from the slaughtered bird, and will put the blood on his ear, thumb, and big toe.
So where he's standing there at the doorway, the door is open, right?
Correct, correct. The door is always going to be open. Yes.
So he's standing there at the door, and the Kohen, and then Kohen shechs the bird, brings it back to him,
Yep.
brings the blood back.
Correct.
So um,
Now I don't think
so
there's any.
he has to go back. He has to stand back and now put his hand and his ear through, isn't it through the doorway at the door
Yeah, yeah,
itself?
through the doorway. Through the
So
doorway.
he's
He's standing in the
standing
doorway. He's gonna go like, turn sideways and stick his head a little bit in, and then just so that his ear goes in.
right
I don't know whether there's somebody there that's sort of like holding the person so as not to ensure that they don't fall in or something. I don't know whether there's a guard. I mean, I presume that there are guards there to make sure that the people who are coming in
because he's
are
not
covered.
tummy at this point. He's just he hasn't fulfilled the whole process, but he's
Correct,
already
correct. He has
tummy.
to. That's the point. The point is that's exactly right.
So
All
I
right.
mean, he could effectively touch the Kohen.
Yeah, yeah. He
He
can
can
touch
touch
the
the
Cohen.
bird. He can touch. He's not really tummy.
Correct, correct. He's not tameh. Exactly. That's exactly right. He just can't go into the azara, and because he is tvul yom, and he's a mechusar kapara. And
Yeah,
he's not tvul yom. He's mechusar kapara. He became tahor from that perspective with respect to the tvul yom aspect the night before. So he's just
right.
mechusar
I understand.
kapara, and he's not going to make anything tameh. That's correct.
Right. I'm
All
just
right,
thinking
Yishakov.
one more point here. The very first Rashi we were talking about. I'm thinking that if that it almost best be. I mean, I'm thinking that the spittle or the fluids or the bodily fluids of an individual, if he's tame, that would be part of the avatuma generally,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. That's 100%. But obviously, we would we're gonna assume that the person who's doing the shechita doesn't
He doesn't spit, he doesn't
spit.
vomit, he
Exactly,
doesn't
exactly.
whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And remember, it's only an avatuma if he's an avatuma. It's not an
Right.
avatuma if he's a rishon latuma. And the case of where he touches a sheretz, he's not an avatuma. He's just a rishon latuma.
Rishon, right, right, right.
All
All
right,
right.
Yishikoach, good day learning. Looking forward to continuing tomorrow.